Hello BookTube, welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the books I've finished recently. I think I've finished about 5 of them, and I'll also be talking about what I'm currently reading. I just finished the Bounty trilogy by Charles Nordhoff and James Norman Hall. I've always been kind of fascinated by adventure stories, whether they're mountaineering stories or stories that take place at sea. I don't know why. I'm afraid of heights and I can't swim. Go figure. So I take my adventures in, literary format. And this was definitely adventure on the high seas. It's historical fiction based on an actual mutiny that took place on the Bounty. And Fletcher Christian ends up taking command of the ship, and Captain Bligh and a bunch of his men, like this, 19 men, are set adrift on a longboat. That particular part of the story is the second part, which is known as Men Against the Sea, in which Captain Bligh, without any navigational charts, manages to navigate this boat like 3,600 miles with like limited supplies. They can't just stop off at any island along the way. There are dangerous natives that are living there, cannibals, just all the challenges that they face. Both of these first 2 books I really enjoyed the most out of the entire trilogy. There was lots of adventure, lots of weather that they face, and the cruelty from the captain, and the uprising and the mutiny. There's a trial scene that takes place in the first book that we get from the perspective of the person that's telling the story. I like the way the authors kind of tweaked some of the historical facts a little bit, like in terms of who's telling the story. The person who tells the story in the first part, the Mutiny on the Bounty story, is actually a creation of the authors, but it's based on somebody who was on the ship. And what they went through is that they weren't like part of the mutiny, but they end up being dropped off before Christian and the rest of his men head off to a place to hide. They end up dropping them off back at Tahiti, and when they are eventually found, are brought back to trial. So that whole trial scene was just really riveting. And of course the whole Men Against the Sea, where you have Captain Bligh and his men out in the open sea in this longboat, exposed to the elements, struggling, of starvation, and having to, watch their rations and stuff, and watching out for natives. And that was definitely gripping. And then the very last part, which I just finished recently, was Pitcairn's Island. That's the name of the island that Christian and his men end up forming a community on. And as it's described also in the little flyleaf here, it's a primitive community whose peace is shattered by a struggle of bitter vengeance. You can imagine how trustworthy are people when you have their bunch of mutineers. They're, along with the crew that mutinied, there's also Tahitians that have traveled with them, some that have married some of the sailors. There are some of the men from the island that befriended Christian and some of his people that travel with them, and the struggles that kind of occur between them and the crew. Was really good too. I still enjoyed the story, but not quite as much as the first 2 parts of it. But I highly recommend it if you want a really good adventure with a bit of historical fact behind it. After that, I came across these 3 graphic novels at work, and these are the ones I kind of have to get back to work. They're all published by First Second, which is the little logo there, the First Second. And I'm just going to talk about each one of them here. The first one, I'll go in order of preference in terms of enjoyment. This is my least favorite out of the 3. This is by Tilly Walden, called Are You Listening?, in which we come across these 2 characters. We meet Beatrice. She's like an 18-year-old who's kind of run away from home, and she encounters Lou here, who this woman's a female mechanic, and she's kind of out driving, and she ends up running into Bea and recognizing her. She knew Bea's mother. She's worked on her car before, and her mother helped her with some tree or something. I don't know. But anyway, she knows who she is, and she ends up giving her a lift. She kind of has an impression that she may be running away from something, but Bea's not very communicative. And then there's this cat they come across, and there's an element of magical realism, which was just very bizarre. It's described here as a beautiful, haunting story of friendship, loss, heartbreak, and a traumatic revelation about sexual assault that culminates in an exquisite example of human connection. A bond definitely forms between the 2 characters, but it takes quite a while like I said, B's not very communicative about why she's running away or what happened. There's a lot of you just don't really feel like you know the characters very well. I don't know much about either one of them. I didn't really feel connected to them. There's not a lot of character development. I don't understand where they're really headed, especially when the magical realism element kicked in. It got very muddied and confusing. And speaking of muddy, the artwork I felt was just very hard to see at times. I mean, just give me a clue there. I mean, I can't. It's darkish, and I've seen dark things before. I mean, but it's just, yeah, I don't know. I did not like the artwork in this. I read Tilly's On a Sunbeam before. From what I recall, I remember liking that one, although I remember the artwork was a little bit dark as well, but I think I liked the storyline a bit better. But I mean, even this artwork was just hard to really see detail and the stuff going on, and the magical realism element kind of just, I don't know, messed up the story for me. So I didn't really enjoy that one very much. Next up was Bloom. This is by Kevin Panetta and Savannah Ganushaw. Don't really know how to pronounce that. And in this one we have our main character, Ari, or short for Aristotle. His family owns a bakery in which he works at. His sister worked there too, but she's recently married and she's, moving on. And he doesn't want to stay there. That's not his dream. He wants to be a musician. He's got his friends and his bandmates, and they want to move away and start a band and everything. Or, well, not start a band, but continue with their music. But, it's a lot of pressure because his family needs him. So he's trying to find somebody to replace him. And he ends up hiring Hector. And Hector is already a bit of a bakery student, so he has a background. He has some knowledge of it, and just kind of learning his way around the family bakery and everything. And a relationship starts to develop between the two men. And I like this one better. I think I like it more now looking back on it. When I read it, it just seemed it could have been more in depth with the characters again, a little bit more character development. The romance seems kind of quick to me in a way, because again, we don't really get much from the characters. Yeah, in terms of the artwork though, this is also like a single color artwork, like you see on the cover here, just this green, kind of bluish green tone to it, with black ink. But I really liked the look of the characters. I liked the openness of the artwork. But they did a really good job of it, like this family and everything, and it grew. I mean, it had a really good message overall, and I definitely did enjoy this one much more, so I recommend that one. My favorite of the three, though, was probably this one. This is Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, and this is by Mariko Tamaki and Rosemary Valero O'Connell. This is our main character, Freddie, and she is in love with Laura Dean. Laura Dean's kind of like the popular, cool girl. But it's a relationship that keeps breaking up. It's a very toxic relationship. You can see it as you're reading it. You can see her friends' expressions every time Laura Dean kind of comes into the picture, that they just don't understand why she keeps going back. It's just not a good relationship she needs to get out of. And I think it's just her kind of coming to realize, or trying to realize that, or finding her own self-worth away from this woman and this relationship, and finding how to be a better friend as well, because her relationship is kind of coming between, making a wedge between her and her friends. But there was a lot more character development in this. You really got to know both Freddie and you could see what Laura Dean was and then her other friends as well are very well developed. Yeah, I just really enjoyed this one. This one's also like a single tone, single color, just kind of this pinkish kind of color, with a black and gray illustrations. But really good job. I like the illustrations. I like the layout of it. I like the storyline of it, and much more worth reading than the others. So yeah, that's for them. And then also, the other thing I finished was an audiobook, and it was the third book in the Extraordinaries series by T.J. Klune. The first book was Extraordinaries, and then you have Flashfire, And the one that just came out in June, which I just finished, no, July, just in July, was Heat Wave. And you have our main character, this is Nick, and his best friend Seth, / love interest Seth. And just a great cast of characters. The main character is definitely Nicky. He's a bit ADD, he's a little bit all over the place, and he has a fascination with people that have these extraordinary powers. There seems to be a thing in this world. Some can fly, some can manipulate shadows, and he writes fan fiction about it. And he's desperate to become an extraordinary. He'll try anything that might help him become one, and they're very harebrained ideas. There's a lot of humor within these stories. I absolutely love them. I love the relationship between Seth and Nicky, and also their friends Jazz and Gibby. There's a lot of queer representation within there. I love Nicky's dad. He's just great. I mean, he's a single dad. Nicky's mother dies early. She's already dead when the story opens up, and you find out about that. And he's living with just his dad, and that bond that they have. His father's totally understanding, totally cool that his son's gay, and sometimes some of the relationships and the discussions that take place are just like embarrassing for Nick, and he's just like, "Dad, no," and he's like, "Nicky, yes," and it's a kind of ongoing funny conversation between them. I found myself laughing out loud so much. Heat Wave is no exception. I absolutely love the way the whole story, the whole trilogy wrapped up. I've loved just about everything I think I've read from TJ Klune, and I always look forward to the next one coming out. It's going to be, I don't know what's next, but I'm going to get it. So as good as the books are, and I physically read some of the other ones, the audiobook on this series, this whole trilogy, was absolutely perfect. The guy doing all the voices and the narration of it, and unfortunately I don't have the name with him, I'm sad to say, but I loved every minute of it. I highly recommend it on audiobooks. So moving on to what I'm currently reading and listening to. My current audiobook, I'll show you while this is still lit here, is David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, and it is narrated by or performed by Richard Armitage. Also, I'm really enjoying the narration of this so far. This is just something I just felt like reading another Dickens. I haven't read anything since Christmas Carol and Great Expectations, so I thought really big, thick, chunky book again for the summer, and I'll make this one on audio, which I think it's like 38 hours, so it's going to be a while till I finish this one. I went in really not knowing anything about it. I know there's a character named Uriah Heep. I don't know anything. I know there's obviously a character named David Copperfield. Just looking into it a little bit now, after I've already started, I understand it's a coming-of-age story about this young man named David. David Copperfield, when he's born, his father's already passed away, so he never gets to meet him, and his mom ends up remarrying, and that relationship ends up being toxic for him. This man, I've forgotten his name already, let me see, Murdstone. Yeah, Mr. Murdstone is cruel, controlling, and I'm curious to see where that's going to go. There's also Peggotty, who is the housemaid, but she's also very close to the family. She looks on David like her own son. I like her character so far. I haven't had too many other characters kind of come into it yet, but it's been, ever since his mom remarried, things have gone really sour really fast. So I'm curious to see how the story is going to develop. Like I said, I don't really know a whole lot about it other than the fact that it is this coming-of-age story of this young man named David Copperfield. If you've read anything, if you've read this before, let me know what you think. It's going to be a while till I get to talk about it more. Like I said, 38 hours of listening. And then my physical book that I'm currently reading is by Umberto Eco. This is The Mysterious Flame of Queen Loana. I do own Name of the Rose, but I, for some reason, have not picked that one up yet. I've seen the Sean Connery movie quite some time ago. I guess I just wasn't in the mood for a book set in that time period. So I picked up this, and I'm just going to read the synopsis for you. Kind of what drew me into the book to begin with. It says, "What if you woke up tomorrow and remembered nothing of your life? The faces of your spouse and children are strange, and the outlines of your childhood are only a blur. This is the crisis that Jambo, an Italian bookseller, faces when he regains consciousness after suffering a stroke. He is shocked to find, however, that he can remember every book he has ever read, every line of poetry, and a wealth of literary quotations. Desperate to retrieve his past, he searches through boxes of old newspapers, comics, records, photo albums, and adolescent diaries, and so Jambo relives the story of his generations. Mussolini, Catholic education and guilt, Josephine Baker, Flash Gordon, Fred Astaire. His memories run wild, and life races before him in a series of images as Jambo struggles to capture the most elusive one, that of his first love. The book is also chock full of the book covers and record albums and things that have come across his that he's read in his life. A lot of them are Italian covers. And I really like that within the book. I thought that was really interesting. There was an Italian newspaper, Corriere del Sole, I can't even say it. But I recognize it as something my dad would read an online version of on the computer. There is quotations from poems. There are posters, fascist times when Mussolini was in charge, and it's just really, really interesting. Like there's even there's some more of the covers and things like that. So it's really interesting how these quotations and things kind of pop up throughout the book and things that he remembers. But trying to find like his past through all of this, to this fog, you might say. He had a fascination with fog as the bookseller, and he would collect quotes and things like that. And it seems like now he's having to sort of travel through this fog. Yeah, so I'm really enjoying this so far. It's like I said, this is the first Umberto Eco book that I've ever read. If you guys have read anything by him, what'd you think? Sound interesting? Any of these sound interesting? Let me know down below. Let me know what you're reading. And I hope you're having a wonderful summer. It's beautiful weather right now. Hopefully it's cooling off in Europe. I know you've got some really nasty weather. We kind of went through our heat wave, and right now we're kind of tapering off into like upper 70s, early 80s Fahrenheit. So it's been really, really nice. So I'm enjoying kind of getting out whenever I can outside to read. So grab a book, get outside, enjoy something literary, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.